Good afternoon, everyone. I am Heidi Ferguson, and next to me is Fidesta Ramsey, and this is Cocktails and Pajamas. We are coming to you this Friday afternoon on a very snowy East Coast, and it's really beautiful out. It's a little gray, but the snow is falling, and it feels really kind of cozy and peaceful, and I'm really appreciating that. So it's been 2 weeks since we've been with you, and so we'll kind of catch up as far as what's going on and where we've been and that kind of thing, and then kind of our agenda for today. Um, so I would say I'm feeling pretty status quo, and also feeling not a lot more, but certainly more deeply connected to my friends recently. Um, and that's felt really sweet. And um, and so like on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I doing? I would say I'm like probably 7.5, 8. Like I'm, feeling pretty up there. And health wise, I'm feeling good. And last Wednesday, I got to see my nephew play live at Villanova, which was a lot of fun. And they literally won the game with less than 2 seconds to spare. It was really exciting. So then to hug him and to get a picture and everything was really sweet. And then I had another friend say to me that I sent that picture to. She said, "I can see the resemblance." And I'm like, really? Because no one has ever said that to me. And I think just simply because his height really kind of is a distractor, because he's 6'9", and with his hair, he's like 6'11", and I'm 5'6", 5'7". So anyway, and I'm like, really? She's like, "Oh yeah, hasn't anyone?" And I said, no one's ever said that. Anyway, so that was fun. And yeah, I would say that I'm, feeling well overall, and I'm going to just kind of stop there and see how you're doing, dear friend Fidesta.
Thank you. I have two friends to share on. One is just really, this is the first month I'm fully in coaching, speaking, teaching mode only. Obviously, I've been doing that a couple years alongside a finance job. And January 2022 is the first month where that's not taking bandwidth, frankly. Thank you. And I have to say, I had an idea it was, taking up space and whatever. I had no idea how much it was impacting me until just having these last few weeks of more spaciousness. And I'm going to say a lot more time in that creative, intuitive flow. Um, what used to look like I've got to get all this, stuff done in QuickBooks. And then I've got to like do notes for clients and think about podcasts and videos that would support them. And it had to be squeezed into this hour, right? Because that's what I had. Where now it's like I'm in, I don't know, just gazing out at the snow going, oh, that article comes up for me. And I'm like, oh, that would be great for so and so. It's a very different process happening. And I'm only just at the beginning inklings of it. So I'm really excited and grateful to the part of me that knew I don't like living in my left hemisphere all the time. And that I naturally intuit and live through more of that right brain. So just being truer to my own nature feels like a big deal. And then I think I told you I had. I'm like, might be TMI for some people, but there's a point. I promise. I had my IUD removal this week, my birth control removal, and I want to tell you how exasperated I was by the medical staff who were women, medical professionals, nurses and doctors, um, who looked at me like I had grown like 3 heads for asking for something that I felt was true for myself, right? Which was removal, more natural, not having a stressor on my system. And I had to have 5 conversations around this with them. And that's okay. I'm solid, right? I can do that. I have good boundaries. What concerns me about this, I was thinking about this before our call, is what about the women who are still practicing boundaries? What about the women who have already felt marginalized, aren't fully in their voice? What about women who have had really traumatic experiences not being heard, right? What about women who can defer to the authority figure? Um, I'm good, right? I had no problem with continuing to show my side of like what I was feeling and what was necessary. I had to lean hard on this is under medical advisement. I pulled that card out. And I have concern.
Mhm.
I have concern when medical professionals don't recognize the patient as the authority on their own bodies. So I'm sitting with that. I'm wrestling with that a little because it didn't made no never mind for me. I knew I would hold that line for me, but I don't think everyone's able to do that. And I think a lot of people may be getting bulldozed in the doctor's office beyond their intuition, beyond their knowing, beyond what they just said they needed,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And I overall feel great about having made that choice.
Yeah.
But I'm not used to being in conventional Western medical facilities. You know, I have acupuncture and chiro and functional medicine and places where I feel like I have a collaborative ally who's got my best interests at heart. And this felt like uh, dismissive, assumptive, I know better energy, which I don't really respect. It's not relational. So that's my soapbox moment because I was like, what the fuck, people? Like, you know, and I bless having a nurse who was like, yeah, it's a sacrifice. Any form of birth control women have to endure is some form of sacrifice.
Right.
And it had me just thinking, you know, about isn't birth control a two-way street? Isn't and yet who ends up bearing the burden, right? So
Right.
it's complex. But the piece I'm just wanting to highlight today is like listen to your patients. Oh my God, it's not complex, you know? And I'm curious for you, being that you trained some of these um, students, maybe more on the empathy attunement side. But what's your take? Just even hearing like that seems felt like the norm.
Sadly, it is the norm in, in traditional medicine.
Hmm.
And and I do think so in my own experience as a standardized patient and educating these students, I think it's becoming more the norm to recognize and be respectful of people's differences,
Hmm.
their choices, whatever they are. So, because I remember, I mean, I've played a million different roles as a standardized patient, and um, and one of the things that I don't do, I think the one and only time I got the flu shot was 20x plus years ago, like a long time ago. And one of the things that we are trained for, like you get all your inoculations, blah blah blah. And I was just like, I'm going to say that I didn't get it, just to see how they respond, right? And and some students were like, but in your profession, don't you need to get it, blah blah blah. And I just said, it's a choice, right? And there were a few students where I had to repeat myself by saying, it's a choice, right?
Mm.
And it was, and it was, and the reason that I repeated myself was so that they were actually not only, I was working on getting them to hear what I was saying, but to
Mhm.
really feel into the truth of what I was saying, which was, it's not mandated that everyone get a flu shot.
Mhm.
So it's okay that I've made the choice, even though I'm in this profession, whatever profession I'm choosing to play, but it's okay to not. Just like it's okay for you to make the choice that you made on your birth control,
Mhm.
you know? Um, you know, and I mean, I can give you a million examples, and personally, and also like in my own personal life, and also as a sanitized patient. But I just think as humans, that we can, this is something that we can practice.
Mhm.
Just be respectful of others' choices, no matter what they are.
Yeah, and if you're struggling, maybe name you're struggling or be curious, right? I would have really preferred a doctor who said, "Hey, why does this choice feel right for you?" And I
Right.
could say, "Well, it's causing weight gain, it's causing inflammation, it's stressing out my system. Um, there are links to it being the kind of cells that create breast cancer, right? Pretty valid reasons."
Of course.
And instead, it was more like, but this is convenient, and
Oh,
whatever rhetoric has been sold to them. Um, and I would love a doctor to say, man, I am really appreciating your sovereignty, and I'm kind of struggling with the education I've gotten around this.
yeah.
It's like, how do you not know as a doctor the um, health costs? But you do only know the convenience. And that gets me curious about how pharmaceuticals educate
Yeah.
the medical
Yeah.
people.
That's a
Because of
whole other
course it
world.
is. It's the big magic pill. It works. It's wonderful. But
Right.
what about if someone's like, I'm suffering with it? Like, then where does the Hippocratic Oath fit?
Right.
So
And
just a
that,
lot of curiosity there, you
right.
know?
Right. For sure, curiosity. And wouldn't it be nice if everyone made the choice to remain curious as to pointing a finger or telling someone they're doing the wrong thing, or
Mhm.
saying, you know, preaching or whatever, just being like, so tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Because I really want to learn, because there is more, there are, you know, to any sort of crystal or story or whatever, there are many facets to every single thing. And so
Hmm.
just because we think we don't know. There are a lot of choices, a lot of options.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I just, again, my mama bear comes online with, again, what about women who aren't yet in a place of strong boundaries and self authority and gut instinct, right? Like, then is our medical system causing more harm?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just very, very in touch with that concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you shared a wonderful podcast this week. I wonder if there's energy there or if there's something else you want to be seen in first
Um
in your week.
no, I feel like it'll just kind of organically launch into the other, you know?
Mhm.
Um So as I think all of you know who are listening, or maybe you're new listeners, but anyway, um, I listen every week to the We Can Do Hard Things podcast. And that is hosted by Glennon Doyle, Abby Wambach, and Amanda Doyle. That's Glennon's sister. And this week they spoke about friendship. And what's interesting about that is that they have alluded to friendship in other podcasts in the past, and then they just decided to bite the bullet and just kind of go all in and talk about it. So what Fedesta and I did, so I shared it with Fedesta and a couple other friends, and what Fedesta and I did was we listened to it, we took notes, and we had our own thoughts about it, and our own thoughts just about friendship in general and how we do friendship, with each other, and how we do friendships with other people, and all that kind of thing. So that's kind of where, yeah, I think that's kind of where I want to go. And then the last thing that I want to say, and is that, if you're familiar with the podcast, you'll know what I'm talking about. But so on Tuesdays, they have like the thesis that they talk about, and then on Thursdays on the podcast, and this is We Can Do Hard Things, they do like a Q&A, and they do kind of like a follow-up to Tuesday's podcast, and then their pod squad calls in to their phone number and they ask questions. And this week they were asking people how, for those who are successful in their friendships, how they've made friendships work in their life to make their lives life-giving. And I called in. I called the number and I commented, and I just shared my 2 cents about it, which is that for me, my experience in friendships has been it's been a lifelong journey for me, literally a lifelong journey. And so and it's something that I've always really longed for and yearned for, because it's my lifeline. Like when I think about my friendships, I can get very emotional. I'm going to work on not getting emotional right now so I can get through this. But because they are so important to me, and I care about my friends very, very much, very deeply, and I love them deeply, and I only want the best for them. And I only want the best for our relationship as it works. And I want them to bring out the best in me, just like I know that they want me to bring out the best in them. And sometimes, sometimes there's conflict, sometimes there are challenging discussions, sometimes it's really easy, sometimes we laugh a lot, sometimes we cry together. It's all of those things. And um and also, without you can't have a relationship or a friendship without conflict. It just doesn't exist. Because if you're friends with someone long enough, there's going to be something that comes up that needs to be handled, that needs to be discussed. And it doesn't have to be like a fire of conflict. It doesn't have to be huge, but it certainly probably needs to be something that is brought to the forefront and said, hey, I missed this in you. I didn't see this in you. Can we talk about this a little bit? And we can talk about that later, but that's kind of, yeah, that's, I think I'm going to just stop there and just see if what you got from the podcast, and if you want to share anything in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had my notes, and I think the piece I loved the most, the part that actually like was comforting, as much as I can feel comforted, was the vulnerability of maintaining friendships. Because I hear a lot of people who want friendships and yet aren't doing the work to nurture, to foster, to farm, right? That land. And so it struck me this like, oh, there's vulnerability. Not only in making friends, right? It can feel like the first awkward part, but then is this person going to want to stick around? Is this person going to be able to handle me when I'm messy? Is this person going to be upfront and honest with me if something, didn't land well for them? Or is there going to be like that little resentment lingering? I really felt into that place that's like, I enjoy it. I don't think I feel vulnerable in the same ways as I maybe used to. I feel like I thrive in that place. But it was a great reminder that, like, oh, there is vulnerability in maintaining friendships and saying, hey, do you want to go get coffee on Friday? Or, hey, your birthday's coming up, right? Like, can we get together? There's bids for connection.
Yeah.
And then as we're all, interdependent humans, like, what if that bid's not received? What if it's denied enough times that you get the information or data that this person does not want to be friends with you? and what happens on the inside,
Yeah.
if that's what you get from somebody. Um, so that felt, I don't know if that one lands for you, but I was like, oof, yeah, there's something so magical and tender and rich and vulnerable in continuing to reveal, continuing to show up,
Yeah.
continuing to bid for connection with someone.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Thank you. And thank you for sharing all that. And so I'm curious to hear from you how you have handled those situations where you're doing your bidding, right? You're vetting, you're doing your bidding, and you're hopeful for this relationship, and the person on the other side doesn't want that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how I'm curious to hear from you how you handled that, or how you, like, yeah, what your process was around that.
Yeah, I think if I was thinking of myself in my 20s, I would be pretty heartbroken, pretty rejected. Through my 30s, I started to feel like, I wonder if this is even really about me, right? So I started to clue into it doesn't have to be some self-absorbed heartbreak. It could just be timing, season, maybe like the universe is having my back in a way of not having this person become a friend. Um, and then starting to just attune to like the level of commitment people were offering and the quality of friendship that people were up for. And somewhere closer to, turning 40 became actually qualifying my friends, right? I think at 22, I was like, love me, love me, love me, be my friend. And at 40, it was like, well, if you're about texting 50 times a day, but never seeing each other, that doesn't work for me,
Mhm,
right? Or if you're about, I don't know, every 6 months or something, I need more consistency.
mhm,
Um, it became a shift in quality versus quantity.
mhm,
And I had recently, a friend who had many losses back to back. So, really valid reason to go inward and
mhm,
tuck away from the world. And 2 years went by. And this was someone I saw weekly.
mm,
So it was understood. I had compassion. And then there was like, wait, now you're not even a part of my life anymore. We never even, like, it felt like ghosting on a certain level.
mhm,
And when I think Abby said it on the call, she said, there's no situational exception out of relationship. I felt really affirmed. Like, I wanted to support this person. I wanted to show up for them. I wanted to be an ally through, I think, a profoundly painful time. And as the months went by and then the years went by of reaching out, sending love, offering a bid for connection, having that bid for connection rejected multiple times, what I felt inside was like, wow. And I'm not like, getting any support here, right? Like this person is in what they're in and not recognizing that, like, I've had hardships, I've had challenges. Everyone who's alive and breathing and has a heart that's beating is going through stuff. And it felt one sided.
mm.
So I think there's a part of me that had to grieve that I had put this person in like inner circle because of how much time we were spending together, but they were really not relational
Mm,
in the ways that kind of are non-negotiable for me,
mm,
which is mutuality, communication, clarity, honesty, transparency, right? Yeah. So now it still has a loss quality for sure, but it also has a, if you don't, if you can't look past your own nose, I am not down for I'm only up for relational beings and mutuality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? I'm curious if and when you've bid for connection and felt, to a huge degree like this person's really not up for friendship, how have you handled that within yourself or with them?
Yeah, so very similar to you, it has changed over the decades, the way that I've dealt with it.
Mhm.
And I will say that it hurts a lot less than it used to, you know, and I think that comes with maturity and personal growth and my connection with spirit and all of it. Um, and also what helps too is having the support of friends to take, to kind of take me
Mhm.
through that. So anyway, um, so I will say, in my 20s, I was just like, oh my God, like, why wouldn't you want to be friends with me? That kind of thing. Like, aren't I a good friend? That kind of thing. And, in my 30s and my 40s, it changed even more. And I was just like, oh, um, here I am putting myself out there and there's nothing coming back. What? It's not reciprocal. And so I feel like that gauge
Mhm.
um, is a lot shorter than it used to be. I don't have the tolerance that I used to, because I don't want to be in pain for that long a period of time. And so that, I'm really grateful that I've been able to see that within myself and to also know that, like the belief of when one door closes, another opens. So if
Mhm.
this person leaves my life, there's space for another to come in. There's always opportunity for different energy to come in.
Mhm.
And um and so, having that kind of like as the basis, if you like the foundation of what it is I'm seeking in a friendship,
Mhm.
that has I believe that is what has brought in the energy. That's the energy I cultivated and manifested for myself for friendships, for relationships. And being someone who has been single longer than I've been in a relationship, my friendships, my women friendships are my lifeline.
Mhm.
Literally, they are my lifeline. And so um, without them, I don't know where I would be. And I don't know I don't know on what scale the unique it's everyone does this kind of thing, but in my experience I feel like it's kind of unique because I don't know anyone who puts as much, what's the word I'm looking for, as much emphasis and importance on relate
Mhm.
on my friendships with women as a like to me they're way more important than looking for a man, like because I trust women more than I trust men. I just
Mhm.
do. And I know humans are complex and we all have our stuff. Um, but I trust women more than I trust men because in my experience, women and so it's kind of like this test, right? Like we all have opportunities to go as deep as we go. Some can only go so deep, but the women that I've met, a lot, several of them that I've met can meet me at that place
Mhm.
of depth. Um, and are more willing to be vulnerable than most men. That's just my experience in, social aspect of the world, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, but and then, the other thing that I really think is important to mention is that because I have a high standard and a bar for myself, I also have a high standard and a high bar for my friends. And that comes with a lot of grace, like a lot of grace, because I mess up all the time.
Mhm.
And I am a believer in forgiveness and giving people second and third and fourth, and sometimes like 20 chances, which is not to my benefit. But I'm just like, I know in my head, I'm going, I know you can do this. I don't know if you know you can do this, but I know you can do this. You know what I mean? Like when they mess up. Anyway, so yeah, it's a real, it's let me just say it's fluid. It's fluid, it's changing all the time.
Mhm.
And yeah, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, I think what makes sense to me is this fluidity, right? Like we're all ever changing, ever unfolding, and then of course dynamics are ever changing and ever unfolding. And maybe we've gone through enough seasons to see that that's the play, that's the dance of life. Some people come, some people go. Maybe that allows me personally to be less precious about it. Like I'm precious about my friendships, but I'm far better at letting go
mhm,
when something's reached its expiration date.
mhm,
Doesn't mean I don't sit with some confusion, right? Especially because there is that part of me that's like, my cup runneth over. I want to give, right? I want to be generative and supportive and an ally. And when someone says no to that, now I'm able to maybe see that they don't have a good receiving muscle
mhm,
or that the time's not right. Um, One of the things they said in the podcast was like, wow, when people don't get how important and supportive friendships can be, they're really depriving themselves of support,
yeah,
right? I think Glennon had this revelation on the call of like, well, I can barely make it through the day mentally with my mental health. I'm so exhausted. I don't want to put in to friendships.
right.
And then kind of being like, but wait, that could actually give to me, that could replenish me, for her to see the other side of it.
Mhm,
Where I've come to you on a really hard day where I'm dragging my feet and coming through a call with you and being like, oh, I actually feel replenished and resourced and loved on in a way that's given me more,
mhm,
right? So
mhm,
even just that mindset of, oh my God, I have to put effort into this thing. Yes. And there is such a nourishment there
mhm,
as well in good friendships.
right.
One thing I want to name too is in my 20s and even 30s, I had this idea of the quality of friendship I wanted.
Mm,
But I wasn't quite baked yet. The people I was friends with weren't quite baked, right? Nobody was wrong. We didn't have the skills.
mhm,
And then I started to have friends who were those things, the standards, the qualities that felt like safety and warmth and care and consideration. Then I had notes, I like really dropped a whole orbit of people.
mhm,
Once I was like, oh, the unicorns I've been thinking about and talking about exist. Like now my tolerance for less than that became apparent,
mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the pandemic created some of that natural falling away, but even prior to that, I was noticing when I would go to something with a friend, like someone I actually really liked, and I would leave depleted time and time
Mhm,
again,
yeah,
right? And being like, is that me? Do I need to set boundaries? What can I do on my side of the street?
yeah,
And yet if that person wasn't willing to look at their side of the street,
right,
then it was like I'm walking into something that's going to deplete me. That doesn't make any sense.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So discernment,
And
right?
guarding of one's energy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I I just had a conversation a couple days ago with a really dear close friend where we talked about friendship and we talked about humor. And in our talking about friendship, I said to my friend, you know, I have this self-judgment about
Mm.
my discernment because in my head I'm asking myself, am I not friends with this person because I think I'm too good for them? Or what is it? Like, what is this uh uncertainty? What is this muck that I'm working through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my friend said to me, that's interesting because when someone doesn't want to be friends with me, I'm asking myself, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? And
Mm-hmm.
you're asking yourself, is there something wrong with you for being discerning? And then when someone is discerning it, and I was just like, that's so fascinating to me, you know? So, and, you know, as I say those words, yes, I am very discerning, but just know that I am even more discerning to myself
Mm-hmm.
and really watching myself and catching myself because I really do want to be the best person and the best friend that I can be for my friends, right? Because if I'm not showing up, if I don't show up for my friends, I'm not also showing up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you said, reciprocal. Like
Right.
even when we're exhausted, even when you're depleted and you're in a really hard space and we have a call schedule and you come on, and I've same thing, like I have been rejuvenated. I feel more connected to myself, more connected to you, and certainly nourished. Like I've got a shot of vitamin D or something. It's really wonderful, you know, to be like, oh my God, it's not the end of the world. There's someone that still loves me and cares about me and sees me for who I am.
Mm.
Yeah. So that bit about grace that I talked about earlier, having grace for myself,
Yeah.
again, having grace for your friends and forgiveness and a lot of space from know that that reflects who you are as a person. Like if that's how you make your choices with your friends. Um, because if I didn't have grace for myself, I don't know where the hell I'd be. I really don't. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I love this just invitation too to maybe allow our audience to think about what is friendship to them,
Yeah.
right? Like, what's friendship to you, and what level of friendship are you up for, and what level of intimacy can you tolerate? And there's a lot of questions there to me. And one of the pieces, they've had those studies where they've named like one of the greatest predictors of health and happiness is our relationships, and not just our relationships, the quality of our
Right.
relationships.
Right.
And they've also, on the other side of it, I've read studies that say 12% of Americans don't have one person to call on a tough day. So the mental health, the level of emotional scaffolding that some people don't have, and hopefully those people find a coach or a therapist or some ally in their community. But I found that pretty shocking
Oh
because
my
if
God.
I was left with my brain
I,
on a bad day, I'd just be sitting in some quicksand eating chocolate, honestly. And
same.
the perspective of other friends, the like acceptance, I think that's probably your biggest gift for me, aside from our humor and our playfulness, is if I show up, I'm probably feeling shame if I'm messy. And
Mm,
you're looking at me like it's Tuesday. It's fine. Go ahead, cry, vent, whatever.
mhm,
It actually softens my internalized shame,
mm.
right? Because shame is so isolating.
It is.
And so if someone sees you being like, I'm just so bummed that I got in a fight with my person and I'm a coach and I should be able to know this stuff, and then you're just like, yeah, and doesn't mean you're like a guru, like you're still human in the trenches, and
Yeah.
normalizing those tough days.
Yeah.
It's a huge offering of friendship.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I feel a tenderness there.
Mhm.
Some people do have friends, but they don't have, let's say they haven't fostered those friendships in a way where on a tough day they feel comfortable calling.
Right.
That's also there,
Yeah.
right? And that's tough because hopefully you dig the well before you need the water, but what happens when you need the water and you're like shoveling first layer of dirt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious if anyone in the audience wants to chime in, like where you're at with valuing friendship, right? I'm very curious, like, is it like, oh, it's not a big deal because I have my partner and I have my job? Or is it like, oh, without them, I would be lost,
Right.
right? I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
Where we prioritize friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm aware of the time, and I want to just share one more thing, which is when I was in my partnership, uh yeah, when I was in my partnership, like between 2010-ish, 2011 to 2014, 15, um, I was not connected to my friends. And that was one of the and I really needed my friends. And not and nobody knew that I needed them because I wasn't it was on me to reach out because nobody really knew what I was going through or what I was dealing with. But I was so distracted with my partner, his life, the kids. Like and I lost myself. I lost myself in that relationship. And I remember thinking that after the relationship was over and I, moved on, I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is who I am. And I will never, I will never be in that situation again. I will never allow myself to be put into, like, I put myself in that situation. I'm going to never do that to myself again because it's so isolating and it's so painful and scary. And yes, there's some shame that comes with that because and my shame was, well, I haven't stayed in contact with my friends, so that's on me. Like I put all this crap onto myself and I'm like, what am I doing? And so, you know um I just want to I guess the reason I'm sharing this is because if there is anyone out there who is in that situation and they don't have one friend to reach out to or someone they can trust they can reach out to, um, if you want, please put something in the comments. Like just share here, either on, you can do it on Facebook, you can do it on YouTube. We're both places. Are we anywhere else? Okay, you're muted.
I had construction trucks. Yeah,
Oh,
please be seen, be witnessed.
yeah.
Just name it. There's some power in naming where you're at. And I have a follow up question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Going from sort of that hyper focused on that dynamic, isolated from your friend's place, how did you navigate re entering friendships, maybe old ones? How were you received re entering the world of friendships, or did you start anew? Like, I'm just curious.
So I reconnected with a community that I was a part of and had been and then but had separated myself from, reconnected myself with the community and completely absorbed myself in that because it was already established. And it's the kind of community where people go in and out all the time. So there's no like, where were you? It's more like, we're happy to see you again kind of thing, that welcoming. So that was easy. One of my dearest friends, at the time, now he only lives, I mean, he was living literally a block away. Now he lives like 4 blocks away, but, we reconnected, which was really sweet. And, I see him more like a big brother figure, which is really sweet to have. And so it was just, I literally absorbed. I was like, I just was like, I need this so much. And then, over time, things dissipated because I was like, okay, I need to kind of delineate and kind of figure out what, kind of like separate things a little bit. Um, and then through my connections again with this community, there were, tentacles, so other communities popped up and whatnot, and you are, certainly part of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, and it, it happens over time, but I'm so grateful that I had already established something. And had I not established that, Fidesta, that's a good question. I don't know how I would have, I don't know how I would
Mhm.
have done it without this already established community.
Yeah. What I'm hearing, and thank you for that, what I'm hearing too is you were really honest with yourself about needing it. I think it's a huge, big like step internally to say,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, I have needs and I need friendships and I need people who can check my blind spots and pour faith into me. And I want to do the same, right?
Yeah.
Getting clear on what you want from a friendship and what you want to give in a
Mhm.
friendship, right? Those are great clarifiers to me. Yeah, and I just wanted to share too after my divorce. And I think, I went from like honeymoon phase into like again dealing with dynamics that weren't healthy and putting a lot of emotional attention there. And so as I was going through my divorce and kind of like alone in an apartment again, um, I had the most gracious friends who I was like, sorry, we haven't really talked in the last year. You know, here's what's going on with me. And if I wanted to go to a concert, my friend Claudia would be like, you're not alone. I'll go with you. Like people showed up. And um, I don't even think there was forgiveness involved, but there was such a level of welcoming
Mhm.
and grace um, in the face of my like embarrassment, frankly, that I hadn't kept up with them. It wasn't, I don't know if I felt shame, but I did feel a healthy remorse, a healthy guilt
Mhm. Mhm.
that like, ugh, I dropped us because, you know, I thought this was more of a priority.
Right.
And actually, I'm recalibrating to what a priority friendship is.
Yeah.
And then the piece that really stuck with me as we close is placing people appropriately into the different circles of friendship. Because that's bit me in the ass before, thinking like, this is totally an inner circle person. I can feel it.
Right.
And
Right.
then being like, oh, yeah, no, I don't think we're going to get close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that too. Yeah.
Thank you. I know there's more. There's so much more
Yeah,
to this
we'll do part
conversation.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if we need to. But yeah, I think this
Yeah.
is certainly an ongoing conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and for our audience too, if there's actual questions coming to mind for you, things you're struggling with, things you're wrestling with, just put them in the chat so we can know ways to support you
Yeah.
in future sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
Are these backwards to you? Do they
Um,
say the and or do they
I just there's a reflection. I can't really. No, they're no. Mm-mm. They're not
okay, because
backwards.
everything's like backwards for me. I wasn't sure.
Oh,
Okay. I'm going by the my middle finger.
stop. That. Yep.
Oh, we might have done this before, but let's see. What do I do that makes you feel heard?
I think we have had this question before, but
Yeah.
we can answer it again.
Okay.
Given
Yeah.
that, given that
Yeah.
today's topic, right?
Yeah.
So what is it that makes me feel heard by
Yeah.
you?
What do I do that
What
makes
do
you
you
feel
do
heard?
that makes me feel heard? Makes
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Oh boy. Well, I think the first thing that I would say is that you show up. You show up. You make this a priority. Um, you're when I'm speaking, you're always looking at me. You're not distracted. There are no distractions. And if there's anything that needs to be qualified or a follow-up question, you'll ask so I know that you've heard me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I always and it when you do respond, there's always an appreciation that you share with me for something that I have shared. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and then the last thing that I want to say is just organically, I feel heard. And I don't know if that I can quantify that anymore, but I just feel heard by you. Because you know the difference between feeling heard by someone and speaking and you know that you haven't been heard. Yes. I feel heard and loved by you. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that you're bringing up like a felt sense, right? It's
Mm,
maybe not a particular technique or a particular thing, but like, oh, I have a felt sense that you're listening or that you've
yeah.
heard me. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome.
Okay, so what do you do that makes me feel heard? Such a yummy question. Well, definitely, I think just the full presence feels like such a high value to me. Um, that whatever you do before a call, that your energy is not scattered, that you're present, that you're fed, you're watered, you're comfortable, right? The pre-game of presence feels like I always receive that from you,
Mm,
which settles my nervous system compared to like someone who's like, oh wait, I got to get this, and oh wait, and then it's just like, were we were we prepared? Like, because that tells me that you're considering me and my experience, right, of our time together. Definitely how you listen when I'm sharing. Um, there's what I experience as attunement, as like some part of you is thinking about how that might feel, what that might be like, sharing my shoes. And then in your reflections, a sense of understanding what the feeling might be. Like, oh,
mm,
that must be frustrating. Um, our laughter, right? That place of like how much I value playfulness and how we can giggle just seeing each other. I feel heard in that need for
mm,
me. Hmm. And the acceptance of whatever I bring in a huge game changer. It's helped me reveal more,
mm,
actually, right? To feel like, oh, time and time again, I share something I think is kind of sketchy or embarrassing or just makes me seem like a grumpy human. And you're like just available and accepting. Yeah. And something about sometimes even in between calls, the way that you check in,
mm,
the way that you're holding something that you're aware of about my world,
mm,
um, feels really special to me. So thank you.
mm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was sweet.
Yeah.
So have a good
Yeah,
weekend.
you too. Thank you to our audience for just feeling into this, invitation around friendship. And do you have enough support? Do you have enough scaffolding? Do you need more support? Um, do you need more holding where you are in your life? Are you able to give that to yourself?
Yeah.
Feels like big, juicy, life giving questions to sit with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, love.
Thanks, friend.
Mm.
Have a good weekend, everyone.